After 7 years of waiting, Silksong finally released over 6 months ago, and everyone who watches this has had plenty of time to explore Fartham, and yet none of you have seen this game in a way that I have. In this video series, I will disable the blur effect that covers all of the beautiful assets in the game, disable some fog and haze and bloom, and then take the camera past where Team Cherry ever thought we could go, to uncover some secrets and details the developers put into the game that were never meant to be seen. This is Hollow Knight Silksong Unmasked, a series that aims to grant you all a new perspective for Silksong and its art, and hopefully we'll be able to answer age-old questions about the game as well as raise brand new ones. Today we'll be dealing with the starting area of the game, Grotto, and all it entails. From the somber Bonebottom to the corrupted Mosshome, the Chapel of the Wanderer, and maybe the biggest corpse of a creature in the entire game, unseen by almost all of you. So let's start right away by opening up the game and... wait, I remember the starting screen looking a bit different. Yes, and that is the case because we are already doing shenanigans in the main menu. We can see just how this screen comes to be, with a bunch of effects on different layers, and this very red one really creating this deep red we see on the title screen. There's also this funky little text that can be seen here on startup and normally would be hidden, of course. A lot of what we'll see later on is like this. A lot of stuff hidden thanks to the camera and this style of creating these 3D environments with 2D textures and effects, which is called parallax effect. In the Citadel one, for example, we can see in the far background that they just used a kinda nondescript and cluttered image to represent the Citadel. While the other menu themes are shown in the background, I do want to mention that of course this whole series and also the first episode I did about Hollow Knight is inspired by the well-known Boundary Break series. So let it be known that my video in theory is about as original as all the Hollow Knight Metroidvania clones that sprouted on Steam in the last 5 years. But the difference between these two video series is that I am very much inside the Hollow Knight creator and lore sphere, which one might realize as soon as they see that I made 50 Silksong lore videos before the game even came out. So yeah, I might have some cool things to say in this video. And now let us finally jump into the game. And there's no better way to start a new game than with disappointment. Our free cam doesn't actually help us for the starting cutscene. The starting cutscene is not a real in-game world, at least not when we get to see it, but it is instead just like a singular screen in a cinema, and we are sat in front of it watching a little video. The only thing of note here is this little effect we see, which is stored outside the bounds of what we would normally be allowed to see. If you have seen a video in which I covered the first area of Hollow Knight in this way, you will remember that this also happened a lot in Hollow Knight, where some nail slashing effects were always stored off screen somewhere. The same is the case for Silksong, though the effect naturally looks different now. But now let's move to the proper start of the game, where I'm gonna show off just how the game actually ends up looking when you end up removing all the pesky little effects obscuring the wonderful textures. Here's a before and after. Look at how crisp and clear everything in the background looks. In the background here, we actually get a great look now at these mossy bell-shaped plants. But I think we can do even better, so let's zoom all the way in. I think this zoom shows well just how much depth there is in these scenes. This is what keeps the game from appearing flat or simplistic, and makes it feel vast and expansive. I've never seen a game have so many layers to it, in a literal sense. Except for Hollow Knight, of course. So a lot of what this video will be showcasing is how these scenes use these environments to work when looked at within a 2D game and generate depth that way. We cannot only use the camera in this series, by the way, we can also take a look at what every single texture and effect in this game is called. So, question for you at home, how many objects are in this room? I'm also counting any particle effects, Hornet herself, and environmental triggers, so basically everything. Are your answers in? Well, here we go. I did not count. And before you call me lazy, which I am, I did not count it because what you're seeing right now on the left side here is the entire list of objects loaded in this room. Every single name is its own object or a copy that is reused within this room at a different place, and if there's a number in square brackets, then this means that there's that number of objects within this parent object. So there are thousands of things here, all deliberately placed, and I think there is a beauty in that. Quick aside. Hi future stizzl here. I did have a whole page of my script dedicated to hating on AI generated textures and art, but I decided to cut it out of the final video because it messed up the pacing of the video too much, and with the way YouTube monetization works, me speaking about what I think about AI in the way I want to with the words I would want to use would probably demonetize me for life and also put me on Sam Altman's ever-growing hit list. So instead I will keep this all squeaky clean and family friendly and just say that human-made art is the only art there is, and AI bros can suck my fucking dick. So wanna talk about some plants? These vines here are called silk catchers in game, meaning that they do not produce silk themselves, but are able to catch it, similar to the silk catching things we see in Grammar later on. Now let us get into the second room of the game in this very natural way. This room has some nice little details to it that we can talk about. You may notice this black barrier that extends way to the left here. We will talk about that in just a bit. Again, we get a good look at the depth of this room here when we take a look at how many different layers of foliage make up this little hill we jump up for the mossberry. And in this angle, we can see just how much Team Cherry loved using the moss spell plants as the final background layer within the moss grotto rooms. They are basically everywhere. And I did say I would be getting rid of some particle effects, and I did, but for very local effects such as the color of water, rays of light, I left them on for the purpose of showcasing some of them. For example, we can see that there's a normal blue water texture behind and in front of two layers each of green fog. But together with the fog, it looks as though the water is way greener. And I do also want to mention these bones here. They have a moss texture on them that just ends in this weird little way that kind of looks like an artery to me, though that is probably not intentional and just how I see it. And it is also just the same moss texture, but mirrored. In general, many textures in these games are not actually unique, but sometimes mirrored, rotated, or resized so people won't notice that Team Cherry is using the same blob of moss dozens and dozens of times in the same room. These light rays also kind of come from nowhere, but they do extend further than they would ever need to. And now before we move on to the next room, I do want to get back to this black square. Once we move under these ribs and uncover the left part of the room, not only does that part get uncovered, the black square is also gone. The fact that this square extends to the left so much makes me think that maybe at some point there was supposed to be a secret within a secret that would have led to another mini cavern on the left side here, or it is something my little pea brain cannot fully comprehend, which is also possible. After all, the sewed profile picture is not only there to brand my channel, it is also an extent of my being and showcases the limits of my cognitive abilities. This third room is also quite interesting. Starting with the obvious one, the door leading to Weave Nest. It's called song underscore? Is it called underscore? It is called song_gate, and the harp in front of it is made up of so many different game objects. Each of these 20 strings is its own unique object in-game that I can disable one by one. We also see these mossberry vines, which are basically exactly called that in-game. We also get this weird little texture way off screen that you would normally never ever see. Zooming into this, the far background also features some very dark textures that are extremely hard to make out, and even though they are only supposed to be rock and bone, some of their jagged features just look very odd to me. One thing that I find interesting in this next scene is that when I decide to delete the bench Hornet is sitting on, she actually really has to react in real time and stops her sitting animation. I thought she would just continue to sit in the air or something, but no. But that's just where my limited game dev knowledge comes into play. Now the actual room here is kind of insane. Not only based on what is here, but also and especially based on what is not here. I noticed the background texture being not used here, so I clicked on this little square, and why the hell are there two giant ribs on my screen? Now these bones are called Bonetown background, and we will later see how the background in Bonebottom actually looks, but why was it here in the files in the first place? It might have genuinely been a mistake or something, because I can literally not tell why they would put this here in the first place. Maybe they just copied the room and copied the textures in it or something and then changed it. But everything in this place is so condensed and contained. I can't imagine Team Cherry ever looking at the cellar and going, "Oi mate, you know what's missing here? 35-meter tall spare ribs." Awful Australian accent aside, here we got a lamp that needlessly extends this chain way past where people can see. Which is a funny oversight, because 9 meters to the left the same happens, but they actually disable two chain textures to save the tiniest bit on resources. And this whole room is just so fun to look at, because there are so many things in the background that you normally don't get to look at. Like this hanging spine that looks like the fourth chorus could wear it as a necklace. The Moss Mother in the middle of the room is called Moss Bone Mother in the files, by the way, which is a fun little detail, and probably just called that because a lot of files relating to the Moss Grotto actually have Moss Bone in their name. Finally, what do you think this door is called? Well, it is called the Aspid Door. Yeah, like Aspid, the enemies from Hollow Knight that still give half of us nightmares. I have no idea why they've done this, but it's not the only time in the game this shows up. Also, they have a different version of the door here, which is disabled and mirrored and with a slightly different angle. Here's what the other version would look like. You can tell just how perfectionist Team Cherry must be when you see stuff like this. Going past the door of Aspets are the Snail Shamans. 3 of the most divisive creatures in the entirety of Silksong. What might they be called in game? They're called small, mid and large. I mean, sometimes simplicity is best, I guess. We can see that this room is yet another ribcage. I would like to gain like 10 subscribers for every ribcage used as a central room of a building in Farloom, and if you all were to abide by those rules, I might be able to raise to the top of the YouTube algorithm and freed from the clutches of Mr. Beast and other grifters. Back to the room though, you might also wonder what this tablet is called in-game. The game, interesting enough, refers to it and only it in this room as a bookshelf. I guess for now this weird piece of lore remains just that. Though I want to ask what you make of it in the first place. Is this, what you see on screen right now, a recipe? But a recipe for what exactly? A spell? A being? I honestly don't know. And here's yet another zoom in and zoom around in a room where we get the Shaman crest. Now, I've largely stayed offline and away from YouTube, so I know I'm probably not the first one to put this into a video, but in case you have not seen this yet, allow me to guide you towards just above the room we are currently in. This is some cut content with a lot of snail shells and even a room we at one point could have entered. We sadly can't enter it anymore, however. This part of the room is referred to as the Snail Dream and features some lighting effects named after Vesper, so maybe this was supposed to be part of the Red Memory sequence at some point, or maybe it was originally the way of getting the Shaman crest during development. What do you think? And now, after this banger of cut content, we move to the next room, where we'll see half of what might be the biggest corpse in all of Silksong. Why only half? Well, you will see. This is one of my favorite rooms in the game. One of the best examples of how Team Cherry have improved and changed since Hollow Knight. The amount of space conveyed in this cavern is insane. Here we see what Bonebottom looks like with all the effects still on. And here's what it looks like with all of them disabled. Night and day. In the far background we see it. Giant bones sticking out of the ground, dozen and dozen times larger than Hornet, hidden in plain sight. These may be the remains of the largest creature in the Hollow Knight universe. But this is only one half of the set of bones that lie down here. The other lies in a different room. So we'll come back to this a bit later. Later I'm going to reconstruct the skeleton or skeletons, and then we can maybe talk about what exactly this was. But be honest, who of you even knew that these giant bones were here in the background? This isn't the only fun thing about Bonebottom though. This in the background is called the Plaza, which is home to a statue with bony steps leading up to it, and a sort of reminder for the pilgrims of this journey they are about to undertake, showing a devout pilgrim holding in their hands an object that looks very similar to the hat Sherma is wearing in the first acts of the game. It is very fun that this is called the Plaza and the individual textures are called Bone Town Core, hinting at this being quite important to the inhabitants of Bonebottom. And yet, to my knowledge, no dialogue or in-game description takes note of this. Imagine the fountain in the City of Tears just casually being 10 layers further in the background without any inscription on it. I do believe that at some point they probably plan on having some kind of lore inscription here, at least thought about it, but it makes sense for the next lore tablet to come a bit later on in the mirror instead. Otherwise, players would likely suffer from a bit of information overload since we have to talk to so many NPCs one after another in Bonebottom. And here is me zooming out and around in Bonebottom and this giant cave to show all it has to offer. Notice how dark all the assets get in the background. In Hollow Knight, they just put the opacity lower, which has the same effect against the black box the game is in. Here in Silksong, the game also takes place in a black void, but they decided to dim the textures themselves instead of lowering the opacity. I decided to change the black box into a nicer color so we can see it more clearly. What we will also see is that they sometimes also just put darkening layers in front of some textures as well. I also love these little streams of water in the background here. They flow and seem so natural, like for example how this stream right here trickles down and then flows to this next edge and continues on. And additionally, I love how they did this effect here. When you enter this room from the left, you will notice that the darkness is slowly giving way to the light, and you might wonder how they did this. I want to introduce you to the giant black rectangle. Team Cherry just put a rectangle here and then lowered the opacity gradually. That's how it works, and sometimes, again, the simplest of effects can be achieved by the simplest of solutions. Lastly, I want to mention how these rooms up on the ceiling are actually called Mosshomes, and they are actually held up by these very unsafe looking structural bone beams. If we now look at where the moss houses of Mosshome are, and we see where Bonebottom is, we can infer that maybe at some point these towns were connected. I mean, there's even an elevator connecting the two, so I wonder why they are two different towns in the first place. Both are home to pilgrims, and based on how they are split up, they honestly seem to just be two districts of the same town. A lower one with just a few tents and all, and a higher one that is home to some more luxurious homes, but we will get a close look at those in just a bit. Maybe the differentiating factor is that the lower ones are the pilgrims that are about to go on the journey, but that begs the question. The ones above also seem to be pilgrims, so why do they have permanent homes? That kind of goes against being a pilgrim on a journey. So maybe you have got some ideas for that in the comments as well. Now here's a zoom out of the Bellway in Bonebottom, which, as are many things in Silksong, just made within what seems to be the remains of yet another large bug. You owe me another 10 subscribers, please. You can also see how the different black layers are here to dim any textures that lie beyond them, as I mentioned before. The room above Bonebottom is technically also part of Grotto, and to showcase this huge room, I actually disabled about 40 black faders that obstructed a lot of the textures in this room. And as we move from bottom to top in this room, you will notice that some textures that are on the player area are disabled when looking at the game this way. That's just something that happens, and is an unfortunate side effect of the tools at my disposal not being quite perfect yet. Back to the room itself though, there's also just a lot of nothing here honestly, but we do get a good look at how the textures gradually change. From the mossy leaves near the bottom to the vines from Shellwood near the top. We also see one of our captives that died from the fall at the start of the game. And as you can see, the platform it landed on is culled out by my camera, but we can see that this metal here is in fact part of the cage one it was transported in. In Mosshome proper, I was actually surprised to see just how far back this room goes in this particular part, even showing us a different house all the way in the back here, including an entrance. It's good to see some actual houses in the midst of this open home floor planning Mosshome has got going on otherwise, and actually there are two homes, just one after another behind each other. And as we see here, there's actually no way to see these houses under normal circumstances, and this is just another way Team Cherry is influencing the housing market by obscuring perfectly viable property in order to raise prices by limiting the supposed availability of homes, and just when I thought they were the good guys. Interestingly, this statue thing was supposed to be used somewhere else at some point, as it is called the Belltown statue in-game. For the room right above it, I'm just going to give you a little zoom in and show you maybe the cutest and coziest home in all of Silksong. Oh my god, what I would give to live here and eat mossberries all day. And there's nothing too special in this room right here, apart from this lonely bell right here that is totally out of place, and the fact that I think I actually never found this mossberry before somehow. So yeah, thank you for the mods I installed for actually making me find new stuff in the game. Well, the moss druid looks even more like a freaky little creature when we remove the pots the druid is using. Oh, and I love that I can reset the effects here to showcase how they are rendered from point 0. I love this comparison in the next room, since we see that the enemies are the only thing rendered with high-res textures all there in the back, which we would normally not see that way in the normal viewing mode. Now, did you know that these weaver places we visit are actually modeled after spiders? Called Weaver Shrine in-game, this part off screen shows that these things clearly have 8 legs, very similar to spiders. Chakra says that the weavers we get our abilities from are bound in spires, so it makes sense that the leg parts of the Weaver Shrine are called spires in-game. Some more textures in-game don't refer to this as Weaver Shrine, by the way, but, and I love this, as a loom room. And as we zoom near the loom room, we see some more cozy Mosshomes obstructed by our landlord overlords from Adelaide, and a very freaky looking bone texture in the background that I bet we will see more of in the Marrow if I ever do a second episode. Let me know if you want to see me let my autism run rampant in the next area of Silksong as well. But now we must wander further and further from the Pilgrim's Path, all the way to a place where we would normally find the first crest of any playthrough. The Chapel of the Wanderer, or Mausoleum as it is called in-game, does not harbor many secrets, but as we descend further into this grave of spines and rib cages, we see what looks like a penis for 1 second. No, but I can't be the only one that sees it like this. Like, what did Tim Cherry mean by this? But yeah, aside from this, I want to mention that the corpse is just called Crest Figure here, so there's no further info on who this wanderer was and what has led to it being buried here. Moving out of the mausoleum, the last room we are covering today is Bonegrave. It is the exterior of the mausoleum, the chapel of the wanderer, and the resting place of many pilgrims. It is also the resting place of the other half of the largest pile of bones I have found in Farloom so far. The exact same bones as behind Bonebottom, now also in Bonegrave. One could argue that this is just random, that Team Cherry just put these here because giant bones are cool and they wanted to include giant bones. But Team Cherry think about every detail in the lore and world building. They don't put something into their game without it making sense in context. So them putting this corpse here must be deliberate. So let me now show you how large these bones are. I made a little picture here to show you how small Hornet is when compared to these bones. Here you go. Hornet is dwarfed by this ancient creature. But what was it? We know of the ancient civilization, but neither the corpses of theirs we see nor their architecture lends me to believe that this is part of the same group of bugs. This could be the same kind of creature as is the corpse in which we have the races against the Sprint Master. The size would fit. The only other type of creature we have seen with this size, besides some slightly smaller corpses like Pilgrim's Rest, is cut content from Hollow Knight. There was this giant spider that was supposed to be in the game, which then got cut out and would fit in Silksong way better. Now, crackhead theories aside, what do you think? My final answer is that after looking at the distance of the bones, that these probably were the ribs and other bones of 2 individual giant bugs that lived in these caverns together. And I think based on what the bones look like and which bones they seem to represent, it being multiple bugs makes sense to me. In Hollow Knight, the largest of corpses were a lot smaller than in Silksong, so what in Farloom has led to these bugs growing so large? Maybe Farloom's past is even sadder than we thought. If Farloom at some point had an environment allowing for bugs to grow that big, the Citadel poisoning the entire kingdom becomes even more devastating. So as a through line of this episode, even though Moss Grotto remains one of the prettiest places in Farloom, it too is not what it once was, long before the start of the game. And maybe next time I will get to cover the Marrow in this way. Hey, so I'm back. I hope you enjoyed this video. Working basically full time and finding time and energy for YouTube are 2 things that are hard to combine. So please, if you happen to be part of the niche of Silksong players that enjoys this kind of content, let me know through whichever way you want. Also, thanks to my patrons for supporting me through these video-less months. I don't take it for granted, which is why the Patreon version of this video is a few minutes longer and also has me going over some X3 changes to Moss Grotto that honestly aren't insanely life-changing, but I think are a good little nugget of extra content for those that want it. My Patreon is $1 per month, by the way. That's it for real now. Thanks for letting me yap for ages. I hope you had fun. And I will see you with either a new episode about the Marrow or about Greenpath, hopefully sooner, rather than later. Take care and bye panada.